kickabout. Los Lobos.
Hey guys, this is Bark Plus Ultra here, and this is my new What If. What if Asta had Candice Catnipp powers? Thunder, shock, and I hope you liked this video and hope you subscribe. In the Soul Society, there are 5 classes of what we call in the world of the living and the other soul races. There are called human that live in the human realm, Soul Reapers, or Shinigami, Hollows, Fullbringers, and the last is called Stern Ritters. The Stern Ritters were nearly wiped out by the Soul Reapers in their 100-year war. The Shinigami nearly made them extinct. There was a Stern Ritter that fought in the war for 400 years, and his name was Yuhua, and he was the Stern Ritter that fought in the war that took on Shinigami, who was not cooperating with the Quincy's demands of letting them kill Hollows, making sure they're gone. But the man that was named Yuhua saw something unexpected when he saw the Shinigami first time he used his almighty. The war was brutal, and nearly all the Quincy's became dead after the war, but a lot of them have kept hidden or tried to not engage with other Hollows or Shinigami, because it is dangerous for a Quincy to be, well, near a Hollow, because Hollows will kill them, and Shinigami are basically very much not happy with dealing with them again. Specifically, well, the Buddha and a certain other Shinigami. But time goes by as the Stern Ritters grow and hide, secretly getting stronger. There was a faction in the Quincy's units that was called the Bambis. The leader was called Bambietta Basbarbine. The other is Giselle Gawali, a blonde-haired girl named Little Toto Limpard, and Minas Makarin, the pink-haired tall girl. Those that don't know what I mean by tall, I mean like she's the tallest girl in all of Bleach. Like, that's the most insane part. Like, she's a Amazon. That's the amazing part. And we get to the last member, Candice Catnipp, the lime-haired beauty as well. And we get to see her. Candice was getting annoyed with one of her friends' attitudes. She was building up a little tolerance to it, but she gets so annoyed with it. She taps on the table out of annoyance, and all the girls were around the table, basically doing their own thing. Mina's doing her eating something. Bambi, being Bambi, basically does her own shtick. Giselle being weird, and Little Toto just eating something. And Candice says, God damn it! What would it take a girl to have some boy that I could have to date? And Bambi says, are you talking about that again, Candice? And Mina says, she is a And Candice says, "Don't you frickin' dare say that, Venus." And Giselle says, "Oh, can I have something to entice you on?" And Candice says, "Ugh, now I think I loosened my whole intestines on thinking that of you." And Giselle says, "Oh." And little Toto says, "What are you bitching about now, Candice?" And Candice says, "Oh, you know what I'm bitching about." Pointing at Bambietta. And Bambietta says, "What?" And Candice says, "Don't what me! You take all the boys and almost kill them every time you mingle with them. Especially the hot ones." And Bambietta says, "Well, sorry, bitch, but you can't always have what you want." And Candice says, "What did you say?" And both going at it, having an argument and pulling their hairs a bit. And Mina says, "They're at it again." And little Toto says, "So annoying." And Giselle says, "I'm surprised it hasn't changed much." Bambietta says, "Oh, you want freaking take it for real? I'll have your ass already have its arrows in it." And Candice says, "Ha! With that explosive personality? Yeah, right. You can't even hit me, even if you try." And both having a bicker on that until Candice felt sick for some reason. Bambietta says, "Huh? What the?" And Candice accidentally puking on Bambi. "You gotta be freaking kidding me! I got these boots!" And Candice says, "Oops, sorry about that, Bambi." Then goes to the bathroom, running as fast as she can. And Bambi looks at her shoes, or boots, and was genuinely pissed. "What the hell? Now I gotta clean these off and..." She then gets super pissed. And then the other three girls saw that and were a bit little surprised on why Candice puked. I mean, it was unexpected, even for her. Then Nina says, "Did she drink too much last night?" And little Tile thinks, "I have no clue. I wasn't even there." Gigi then says, "I don't know. Maybe she did. I haven't seen her much when she was off with Bambi on that." And Minas then thinks, "I'm gonna walk to her." And little Toto says, "Alright." Gigi says, "Okay," with a cheery smile. And when Minas goes to Candice, Mina says, "Hey, Candice, what's the matter with you?" And Candice says, "I don't know." And then Mina says, "You puking was unexpected." And Candice says, "Yeah, I know I don't have a hangover because I didn't drink that much. Maybe I was knocked up or something." And Mina says, "Hang on, you don't remember?" And Candice says, "Maybe I had a few, but I probably don't remember." And then Mina sighs and goes to see Bambi. And Bambi was cleaning the shit out of her boots from when Candice puked on them. She then kicks the wall out of frustration without thinking because she doesn't have her boots. Ow! 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 So... Damn it, Candice! Those were my favorite boots! Bambi was so pissed when she did that. Then Mina says, "Hey, Bambi, were you at the bar or something? I don't know if you've been." And Bambi then thinks, "Yeah, me and Candice are basically at the bar." And Bambi then thinks, "Oh yeah, Candice was trying to get a guy to have a sex with her. And Mina says, did one of the guys actually? Bambi then thinks, shockingly, yes. And Mina then thinks, of course, slut. And then Bambi says, unexpected puking? Wait, you gotta be kidding me. Bambi then thinks to herself, unexpected puking? Didn't have any alcohol this day? Wait a minute. And then Mina connects the dot. You're kidding me. Is she? And Bambi and Candice go to the other girls, Gigi and Little Tato. And Little Tato was basically eating her food, not caring, seeing that Bambi and Minas were together. And Little Tato says, so did your boots are clean off now, Bambi? And Bambi says, no, but we were talking about Candice. And Little Tato says, what? You thinking of kicking her out? Bambi says, no way. Wasn't even thinking that. And Gigi then thinks, what? Do you want me to turn her undead? Because I will. And Bambi then says, no. Ew. Keep your blood away from us, Gigi. And Gigi then saying, oh, what is it then? Is it something unexpected that you came up with? And Mina then says this, we just thought of something. And when I asked Bambi about their one-time thing when they were with each other, when they were going to a bar, Candice actually got someone to date her, or have sex with her. And Little Tato says, that's surprising. And Bambi says, I think I was so drunk that I didn't remember much, but I do think they did have a deed. And Candice was probably as drunk as I was. And Little Tato thinks, that would actually make sense. And then Gigi says, how drunk were you? And Bambi thinks, I don't remember the guy's face. And Gigi then thinks, so you're pretty drunk back when you were like that. Got it. And Bambi then thinks, I don't think I was that drunk, but, Then Candice thinks when she was done puking. Oh, God. Then a few memories come in when she had sex with a unknown Stern Ritter man who died to Bambi. And Candice, right. I forgot. Bambi was also drunk as I was back in that night. She killed him. I don't know who that guy was. He was handsome. And Candice opens the bathroom door and saying, hey guys. And then Bambi and Inez, Little Toto, and Gigi look at her saying, you're back feeling better. And Candice says, I feel like shit. And then Bambi says, you know the guy? I don't remember his face. And Candice then says, I was drunk as you were, but I do remember a bit. But the only part was he was handsome and you killed him. And then Bambi says, yeah, that sounds like me. Little Toto, Eunice, and Gigi, Candice look at their eyes, seeing with not surprising with that expression. And Bambi then says, whatever. Are you even... Me and the girls were talking about you being pregnant, possibly, from that night. And Candice says, what? How? What brings you up with that assumption? And then Minas then says, your unexpected puking? And your breasts were enlarged a bit? And Candice then looked, I didn't even know this. And then Bambi then says, Alright, girls. I think we know how to 100% confirm this. And she goes into the bathroom and grabs a test. And then Nina says, were those for you when you were... Bambi says, well, I had to keep check on them most of the time. But I mostly killed the guys. Then Bambi thinks, oh, it was mostly because I had to. Then all four of the girls look at her and obviously know what she was going to say. I've heard I get it in ya, right? Candice says. And Bambi says, yeah. And Candice says, and you say I'm a slut. She's the biggest one. And Bambi says, oh, shut up. And then Bambi hands over the pregnancy tester and says, now get to it and figure out if you're pregnant or not. And Candice says, alright. And Candice says, but first, get out! And pushing them away. All four of the Bambis were out of the bathroom. And Candice, over time, takes the pregnancy tester. And Candice says, you gotta be kidding me! And Bambi thinks that reaction, yep, she's pregnant. And Mina says, definitely pregnant. Little Toto says, oh, no shit, she's pregnant. Giselle says, she's pregnant. And Candice says, will you stop making a joke of it? I can even hear you in the bathroom. And then Bambi says, well, we have to hide you from the other Stern Ritters. How are we gonna do that when there's Pepe Le Pew looking around, skulking like a pervert? And Candice says, I don't know, keep me in the frickin' room for a long time and feed me something that ain't having shrimp or any alcohol. And then all the girls look at each other and sigh. For a couple months, Candice was having a lovely time having the side effects of the pregnancy while keeping hidden from the other Stern Ritters, thanks to the Bambis. While some others, Stern Ritters, were questioning Bambietta, specifically asking, and he was very curious on what Bambietta has to say, while Bambietta was just pissed to see him or talk to him. Pepe tries to be a very much of a stalker type to deal with, or watcher of all situations, but he was snuffed out by Giselle and her zombie creation. If ever Pepe tried something stupid, making sure she has multiple ones to emergency on what was going on. Other Stern Ritters don't care much, so except for a few, Ewok and his second commander, Jugram. But that's the only people who were curious. But they don't care much about it. Well, as much. Ewok could see the future, but he doesn't really care much about the Bambis because he's focusing on a other situation. Because they're not the threat, specifically. He's focusing on something else. And then when Candice finally says, ugh, this frickin' sucks. And Bambietta says, well, you got yourself pregnant. And Candice says, oh, I don't need a lecture from a slut as you. You do way worse. And Bambietta rolls her eyes. Alright, how much longer do we have to deal with this kid? And Candice says, well, I'm definitely not bringing it into this shitty war. And Bambietta agrees with Candice. As much as the war is somewhat the big thing, she would give two shits about dealing with it because she's not that loyal in that cause. Neither the Bambis are not that loyal in any situation with the war. They're loyal to an extent, but not that loyal. So, And then the 1 year have gone by, and Candice felt a kick. Go! And then Bambietta says, alright, looks like it's here. And then Giselle says, woo! I call dibs on being the doctor. And all four of the Bambis say, hell no! Bambietta says, no. Mina says, no way. Little Toto says, like anyone would trust you. Giselle says, you're no fun. But who's gonna be the doctor, huh? We can't trust any Sternritters. And Bambietta and all the other Bambis then think about that and sigh reluctantly. Candice says, fine, but you're not touching the baby. As much as I do not want anyone finding out, I will kill you if you ever lay your hands on it. And Bambi agrees with this statement because of Giselle's habit. After a few hours of horrific pregnancy to deal with, Candice was tired out on dealing with all the situations with being pregnant. And Bambietta says, oh wow, it's a boy. Candice was knocked out because, pregnancy. Giselle says, well, it is your child. It looks adorable. A bit. Mina says, oh my, he's quite strong for a child of hers. And then Bambietta thinks of something. Little Toto, we need some way to keep the Sternritters from knowing about this, because we know how they think. And Little Toto says, sigh, while eating a food, some sort, like rice. I guess wait about 3 years or 2 years, then drop it off in the church. And Bambietta says, yeah, that'll work. Candice then wakes a little. Well, that was hell. Then looks at her son. So, what gender is it? And Bambietta, Giselle, Minas, and Little Toto says, it's a boy. And Candice smirks. Well, he's happy to see that it's alright. Nothing gone wrong. And definitely need something to get the pain from numbing it off. Candice holds her baby. And Candice thinks, hey guys, what should I name it? As much as I don't want him to be in the war, we definitely don't want him to be nameless. And Bambietta says, what? Name it yourself. And Innocent says, I think about, Asta. That'll work. And Giselle says, what? That's so boring. And Little Toto says, I don't give two damns about it. And Candice says, sure, Asta, I'll take it. And Asta was born from Candice. And when 2 years have gone by, Candice says, alright, I think nobody would figure out if it's Minas. And Minas says, but you're the fastest. Bambietta says, true, but they would expect that. And she has greater reishi. And Minas says, right, alright, I'll do it. And she flies off, keeping her reishi from not seen by others. She takes her takes Asta to a different universe, which is a different human realm. Alright, the Clover Village. She looks around for a map and sees where it is, and says, alright, it would be a good place to keep you safe. And then Minas flies to the church orphanage and says, alright, it's good to see you safe, Asta. And Asta sees the one glimpse of Minas. And as a baby who is nearly turning 3, he thinks Minas was his mother. Pink hair, pink eyes, and a pretty look. And Minas smiles to him and flies off and was left at the Clover Kingdom Church. And that's where I'm ending this video. I hope you liked this video and hope you subscribe.
I feel the hole. No peace will come, just a burning flame. I'll feed the beast and kill the